Hello, everyone. Welcome to our SIG meeting for January. We're happy to see you. We have a topic that we thought might be of interest. There is some very good free system dynamics modeling software out now, and there are three that are more prominent than others. And so we have three speakers. Don DeLand will be our first speaker, and he is going to talk about Stella Online and Stella Professional, both of which are free. Stella Online is free to everyone, and Stella Professional Online is free to all K-12 schools, and he will talk about that. Then we're going to have a video of John Darko, who will talk about Model Builder. It's not an actual simulation software, but it does some preliminary testing of structure, and he'll present. And then we will have Steve Roderick, and he will talk about Sage Modeler, which also is a simulation creation software. And each of these people will have 10 minutes. Let's allow them to present, and then we will have all the rest of the time for conversation. So we're hoping we have half an hour for conversation and questions. And then if the questions go longer, we can go longer, but people who have to leave on the hour will have seen most of the important information. So I would like to give the floor or the screen to Don DeLand.
Thank you, Diana. So I just wanted to clarify one thing, that the three that we're talking about are the three applications that we heard about being used in K-12 education. There are plenty of more modeling applications out there,
Yes.
but
Yes.
we didn't find anybody who was using them in schools. So just a few slides to get started here. So I'm going to be talking about Stella, which is a full-featured system dynamics modeling application. As far as I'm aware, it was the first one to introduce the icon-based modeling interface, which has actually become fairly common nowadays. But in the old days, using Dynamo, everything was command line, and you executed a program. So that was in 1985, the first version of Stella. So coming up on 40 years next year. So it's been around for a while. Popular for learning system dynamics, partly because of its relative ease of use compared to some other applications like VentSim or PowerSim. And then it has really good support for good modeling practices, and I'll highlight some of those as we're going. Three versions that I'm going to be referencing. So Stella Online, which is free for everybody, but it's very limited. So you can only have up to 3 stocks. You can only have 20 elements total, of which the stocks are included in those. One graph, only 3 variables on your graph, and only 5 comparative runs. And then there's Loops That Matter, which is something I'll show very briefly, but won't go into. And then Stella Pro Online, which is not free for everybody, but it is free for K-12. And if you want a license, just send an email to the support at IC Systems, and they'll get you taken care of. So that's the one I'm going to be talking about mostly today. It does not have any limits on the number of elements, graphs, and so forth. You can also style elements if you so desire. And then Stella Architect, which is not free, but there's a really good academic pricing for K-12. I think it starts at $199 US, depending on, might go up from there depending on what features you're looking for. which is the full featured application. I mean, the interface builder, data management, import analysis tools, and so forth. In my experience, it is really useful to have at least one copy of Stella Architect to support a classroom for various reasons. I mean, you want to be able to have that full featured application available to you, since there are limitations to what you can do in even the Pro Online version. So a few just links. So the Stella Online and Pro Online live on the IC Exchange. That's where you go to actually use the application. Products and documentation is on the straight IC Systems website, and then the support email. And I'll throw those into chat after I'm done here. So let's just go over to Exchange and get started. When you go into Exchange, this is what you see. This is a collection of stock flow models, interfaces, simulations that people have posted that are freely available. Anybody can go into them. If you look down, you notice some of them, none of them here, have buttons that you can download the model. So if you want to create your own version of this or dig in under the covers, you can't just copy it to your collection. You have to download it to your computer and then upload it to your collection, but then you have full access to that model. So for example, you can search on either topics, right? I can search for things that if I can type of models that I have posted, we can look at, since we were just talking about Hamlet before we started the recording, just to give you a sampling, here's a version that Emre, who's with us today, posted in Turkish. Here's one with an interface or a dashboard where it kind of storyboards the process. So you go in and look at the background, get a guided tour of the model structure, and we won't go into the details, but it's really just there to kind of guide you through how the model is created. Conduct experiments on Windows, Hamlet, kill Claudius, and do run. So basically, you're not, with the interface, you're not giving full access to the model. You're giving controlled access, but it's much more easier for people to typically to interact with the content of the model. So just a point of order, right? The interface is only available in Architect, or the interface builder is only available in Architect. You can't create these interfaces in Stella Online. So if I want to go to my collection, so these are just models that I've created loose. I can also manage them. So most of these were organized for a course that I was teaching last year. To create a new model, I just add new content, and I can create a model or a CLD or what have you. And I'll focus on a population model today. So I'm just going to call it population. I can add a description, add those search tags, either but the categories that are the defaults or enter my own. And then I have the option of choosing whether I share this with everybody or whether I keep it private to myself. So if you're sharing it under the Creative Commons license. This is not one I'm going to keep, so I'm not going to share it. Then I can either upload an existing model. So if you had copied one down, you could upload that back to your own collection, or start with a new model. So let me start my population model. So this is the basic interface. You've got your icons, stocks, flows, converters, connectors. You've got your model settings, and then this will also be used to declare all of your equations and whatnot for stocks and flows, right? So I have a stock, I call it population. Right away, you can see one of the model building supports, which is that population hasn't been defined. We don't know what is the population, right? So I have to come in and sorry, forgive me. I've got to hide you all to be able to see my screen. Right, and let's say I have 1,000, but I'm going to have like 1,000,000. I'm going to scale that by 1,000,000. So 1,000 million people. Then I have want an inflow. I'm going to call births. So again, since I haven't defined births yet, I have a little caution icon there, reminding me that it hasn't been defined yet. It's also mentioned down in this right corner here that the equation for births is not defined. Going to have an outflow for deaths. I'm going to have 2 converters, a birth rate, and a lifespan. And then I'm going to wire everything together. So we're going to have a feedback loop. Births are going to depend on the population. Deaths are going to depend on the population. Births are going to depend on the birth rate. Deaths are going to depend on the average lifespan, right? So a bunch of things I still have to define. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of things in here. We're not going to talk about where these numbers come from, but so a birth rate of 0.02 per year, a lifespan of, let's say, 80 years. Okay, and then I still have my flows I need to define. So because population and birth rate, actually, let me get my spotlight here so you can see where I am. Since population and birth rate both point into births, I have these required inputs here. So that's just going to be population times birth rate. And you notice, again, one of the supports, because I had added my units first to my stock, the flow has to take on those units per unit time, whatever your model settings are, right? So I don't have access to that units because it's done for me automatically. Okay, deaths, we have population and lifespan as required. We also have a whole library of math functions available, but we're not going to use those today. So population divided by lifespan. And I'm almost ready to go to run my simulation, except I have 2 unit warnings, which I have a clues to, right? That I have births is expecting 1,000,000 people per month, which is my model setting, but the equation suggests per years. So let me go back to my model settings, and I'm going to run this for, say, 500 years and change the units to time, change units to years instead of months, and those warnings go away. Let me throw a graph down. I'm going to add population to the graph, and I'm ready to run my simulation. And we get nice exponential growth. All right, so from here, a few things. If we want to see the causal loop diagram that's being created, we can see that. And we have a reinforcing loop for births and a balancing loop for deaths. Over on the right, this is what is called loops that matter. And basically it's showing balancing loops in blue, reinforcing loops in red. And then I have these little spinners on my converters. So if we change lifespan, then you can see the blue balancing loop starts to dominate, and we get come back here. Just keep showing me all of those, right? We get exponential decline instead of exponential growth. Okay, I want to do a few more things. So run some extra simulations. So one of my best practices is to initialize my stocks outside of the stock. I don't like hiding values inside of the stock. So I'm going to have an initial population. And then instead of actually specifying that, I'm going to have just refer to that in the stock declaration with all of the available inputs, right? So it can be basically any converter in here. One of the best practices here is that I cannot go directly from a converter, point directly from a converter into a stock. And it gives me this little alert that that's not allowed. Right, so have my initial population. I should have the same graph that I had before, but now in my graph settings, I can click on this comparative graph. So I have a before and after. So let me clear that data and start over again. So starting with 1,000 population, if I come in and change that to 2,000, I can run another comparative graph, change to 3,000, and so forth. So how are we doing on time, Diana?
Your mic is closed.
I'm
Diana,
sorry?
You're
muted, Diana.
I think we are over on time. So I think
Okay.
that is that right, Emery? Did you pay attention? I didn't pay attention to when I quit talking. Is it about 10 minutes?
It's
Yeah, let me just add
to
one
15.
thing.
Okay.
Okay, go
Right,
ahead.
which is that if I wanted to do a historic population, what I'd like to be able to do is create, I'd like to be able to create a table function and just import that data straight into the table. And right now I cannot do that in Stella Online, but we have it on good authority that this might be coming soon. So that if I have data in a spreadsheet, I'd like to be able to just copy that in into that table function. So that's something that you can do in Stella Architect Online. But I do have just another model. I've already done this. And what we find is that there's this crook in the historical data. Make that a little thicker so you can see it. That the birth rate and the lifespan have changed over the years. And if we go look at those, right, these have been kind of calibrated to the historical data. And you can see that like the birth rate has changed from 0.022 to 0.027. So I will stop there and we can move on to John Darko.
Thank you very much, Don. That was wonderful. Really appreciate the thoroughness of your explanation. Emery, do you want to show the video? John Darko is a teacher, a high school teacher, and cannot be here at this time. So he created a video for us. And Emery will show the video.
Hi, my name is John Darko. I'm a science teacher at Seneca East High School in Attica, Ohio, and I had the pleasure of helping produce Model Builder for Biointeractive, HHMI Biointeractive Model Builder. It is an app that's online. It's free for everyone to use, and you can create your own models. You can share those with students, and then the students really the point of it is students end up trying to recreate the model that you built. And they can get either self-assessed, some kind of formative assessment, or it can be a more summative assessment where they won't know their grade until you grade it. So let me get into it. The overall goals is I have been doing modeling with my students for a long time, but other teachers and oftentimes for students, they struggle at the beginning stages. I want more teachers and students to be modeling. And so we created this as a kind of introductory step into modeling. This does not produce system dynamics models, so you cannot run simulations of these models. They're just static diagrams. But it is a step towards building computational models. So in addition to that, we wanted a way to be able to assess students' models versus me going through each model and trying to understand the structure of students' models. I wanted a way that really could be automated. Okay, to get Model Builder, go to biointeractive.org/classroom/resources/model/Model Builder. And it'll take you to this page. There are resources here. There's a user guide, tells you how to use Model Builder. A pedagogy guide tells you how to use Model Builder in your teaching practice. And then there's a whole catalog of biointeractive models. It's kind of the answer key for the biointeractive models. You can create your own models, though, for students to use in your classroom. Let me get into the tool. So over here, I'm going to start the tool. And so all that catalog of model really tells you the answer keys to all of these. And we have a whole host of different models ready for you to use in your classroom. There's about 60 of them altogether. Let me show you a population model. So I'm going to open this. And there's a description bar here. These are just directions. And then there's hints. Drag objects from the object bank. So we drag these. These are objects. And you can check these models, check, and it gives you feedback. There's 5 mistakes found. The goal is to have 0 mistakes found. So what you can do is you can click on here and it tells you some hints here. You can actually turn those hints on and off. I'm going to leave them off for now. Population growth, I know that that is a flow, so I'm going to name that object as a flow. This object, let's see, population size. What is that? That is a stock. Okay, now they went from little red indicators that tells you it's wrong to yellow, which just means it hasn't been checked yet. Yellow means it hasn't been checked. So we're going to hit the check button up here, and it's going to grade this model according to some reference model. Remember, you can create your own models and create your own reference models, and then students can kind of build models like this against your reference model. So I'm going to hit check, and now I just have 2 mistakes found. Well, this is a flow. However, this part is not connected correctly, but this part is. It's just going to some infinite source. So I'm going to click on here. I'm going to click link flow to, goes to my stock, and I'm going to check it again. And now I just have 1 mistake. There's actually drop-down boxes here. It's missing a connector. So where would our connector be? I'm going to click on my stock, Click, it's going to be a positive connector. It's a positive feedback loop leading to exponential growth. I'm going to hit check again and 0 mistakes found. Yes. So this is a very simple model. However, it's a good way to get students into understanding the logic of how stock and flow models, the icons are put together, and what the difference is between a stock and flow, and a nice way to auto grade for students. They can do this independently. And remember, this is all free for you to use. You can create your own models for free. There is no charge for any of this. All right, so this is what we call a self-check model. Now, I'm going to go back and discard and exit. You can save all these. You can create models. You can create 3 types of models: a conceptual diagram, a causal diagram, and a stock and flow diagram. Let me show you what those 3 are. So under our catalog of resources, this is like the answer key to all of them. I'm going to zoom in for you so you can kind of see. This is let's see. This is a causal model. It just has objects with positive and negative connectors. Then we have stock and flow models, some more causal models, and this would be a conceptual model. So the connectors are neutral. And things like cladograms or phylogenetic trees are good for building models like this. All right, so you can build models, and right here, I'm going to just build let's see, I'll build a stock and flow model. So I have an object. I'm going to say N for population. I'm going to name that stock. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to name that growth. And I'm going to call that a flow. Click here, link flow to, there we go. So I have a very simple model here. I'm going to go up to my hamburger, and I can hit save. I can save it just as this would be the reference file. I'm going to save it as the zip file just to show you. I'm going to call this SIMG for simple growth. Hit OK. And as this saves, then I'm going to put it right here. It's going to save that file. I'm going to show that. And I actually have to extract it because it compresses all those. So I extract it. There we go. Okay, so what it did then is it built a assessment file, which I haven't gone over yet, a reference file, which is like your template, and then a self-check file. You can share these self-check files, and then students can open those self-check files through Model Builder. And when they open them, they will just kind of recreate the model just like we did until they get 0 mistakes found. With the assessment files, that's a little different. Let me show you how that works right now. So I'm going to get out of here, go to Open Model. And here's another one that I made. So I'm going to, let's say I share this with a student. They would open this file through Model Builder. And we have growth. I know that's a flow. We have per capita growth. I'm going to turn my hints off, which I'm going to call a variable. And then population size is a stock. Let's see, I'm going to link flow to here. I know that that has a positive feedback loop. And here we go, like this. Now, here, there's no check button. So all I can do is save that. And I'm going to call this John Darko. I'm going to save that. And then you would share that with the teacher. And right here, I'm going to hit save. Now, real quick, let me show you what you can do. There's the grading tool, open. You open the reference file, and that's going to check all these models. So a bunch of students took these. I'm going to go to those and open. It says there's 7 students, and it auto grades all of their models in a batch all at once and then evaluates how they did. Looks like John Darko got the best, and that is Model Builder. Feel free to ask me any questions about it. I'd love to share it. Thanks.
So we can, if you want to contact us, and we'll give you that email later, we can get your email to John Darko so that he can respond to any questions that you might have. Now let's go to Steve Roderick, who will talk about Sage Modeler.
Okay. Can everyone see that screen? It's just a big logo, Sage Modeler. Okay.
We're seeing your notes too, Steve. Just so you know.
Oh, you're seeing the notes, so I'm in the wrong share.
Yeah.
Let's
Thanks,
stop
Don.
sharing. Don't want to see the notes. I guess I could see the notes. What the heck? Here, we'll do this one. Oops. How's that? Okay, I'm going to try to be very quick here because I'd like to have some time to talk about some of these things. So I am going to, oops, there we go. Just start with a quick introduction about what Sage Modeler is. I think it's important to be clear up front that this software was not developed as pure modeling software. It was developed out of a grant that was doing some research into whether or not middle school and high school students, if they were engaged actively in model building, would that make any difference in the way they think about systems and their intuitive sense about structure of systems and the behavior of systems. So although parts of Sage Modeler look a lot like Stella or Vensim or Insight Maker, any of those, there are also parts of Sage Modeler that are very different. And we won't have time to go into all of that today, I don't think. So let me start. There are two links down here. If you copy them, if anyone has a computer and they'd like to follow along while I'm doing this, it's the second link here, sagemodeler.concord.org/app for app, that will take you to the application, right? So I'm hoping everyone can see this. When I open up Sage Modeler, I'm presented with a window that asks me if I want to create a document or do I want to open a document that's already there. So there are some, if you go to open the document, there are some examples, some Sage Modeler examples. I'm not going to go into these. Some of them you'll see are dynamic. Some of them are labeled as static. We'll see what that means in a minute. So I'm going to just choose to open up the workbench. So the workbench looks like this. There are tools along the perimeter. I'm going to start over here. These are kind of modeling tools. These are the overall tools that control things that are actually going on in the model as it's built. And they will highlight as they become active. So right now there's only one of these active. This is the system settings thing. If I click on that, I'll get a dialog box that says simulation settings. And what I'd like to point out immediately is that there are three different types of models that you can build in Sage Modeler. There's one that we call the model diagram, which if you're at all familiar with concept maps, it's essentially a concept mapping tool. There's one called the static simulation modeling, which is the default version of this. And that is essentially, it looks a lot like a concept map, but it allows you to assign weights to the causal links and kind of define the link using a graphical function. There are no numbers involved, no algebraic expressions involved in any of this. Remember, this is targeting younger kids for the most part. And then there is the option for dynamic time-based modeling, which is the dynamic modeling that we're all kind of used to. If I click on that, notice up in the upper left-hand corner that these icons are going to change a little bit. So if I click on that, you'll see we have some new icons. So you have this kind of generic icon, which I'm just going to call an information variable for now. You have a collection of things, which is supposed to represent an accumulation, which is a stock. And then you have this valve with a plus and minus sign on it, which are the flow variables. So we can build dynamic models using those three types of variables. So I'm going to go back for a minute and show you a quick version of what I'm calling a static equilibrium simulation. Let's build a model of a population. Okay, so try to imagine yourself as a middle school kid, and we're studying, let's say, the deer population locally, and we're worried because coyotes or wolves are coming into the area, and we wonder what's going to happen to the population. So you might want to start with kids brainstorming ideas about what would be part of that system, and they can do that on the canvas here. They can pull variables down here and drop them on the canvas like that, and you can name them. So I could call this deer population if I wanted to, but the blue squares are kind of boring. So there is also a way of dragging different images down. So I can grab that square that says new image, drag it down, and I will get a dialog box. And I'm interested in deer. Of course, I have to spell it correctly. And I'm going to do a search, and it goes into to Pixabay, which has images that are in the Creative Commons, and I can pick whatever I want. So I can look through a series and I go, oh, I like that one. I think I'll make that the deer. So I can make this image now become the deer population. And to continue the brainstorming, students might say, well, births are involved in that. So let's look up birth and see if we get anything. How about a stork? Use a stork. So I can say that births will impact the deer population. I can do deaths. Search there, see what I get. And these are kind of grim, I always wonder. There, or how about that one, RIP? So I can label that as deaths. And essentially what I'm doing here is just building a system map, right? I mean, there's no sense of time change over in any of this. Maybe I want to look for predators. I'm going to use a wolf. I can add that image, and I'm going to say that that's going to impact the deer population. So I can create a map this way. And because I am in what's called the static equilibrium modeling simulation mode, I can also define these arrows. So the reason that they come up as being dotted arrows is because there's no definition to them yet. So there are a number of ways to do that. I can double click on the arrow like this, and I will get a dialog box. I'm sorry, the wolf is hidden here. Move him out of the way. But the student can read an increase in untitled. Let's make this wolf, so that this makes more sense. Whoops, sorry. Right, an increase in the wolves causes the deer population to, and then you make a selection. Is it going to increase? Is it going to decrease? Or is it going to vary? So we know that it's going to increase. I click on that, I get another selection, and I get choices about how it's going to increase. So I can define, is it going to be a linear increase? And it gives you a graph shape for that. Something that increases by a lot, something that increases by a little, something that increases by more and more. So you can make these choices about what the causal links actually mean. Now, for now, and because we're going to move into the dynamic modeling, I'm going to choose to use only the basic linear relationship. So I'm going to get rid of this. And that little box that you saw turn up, we can talk about that a little bit. Get rid of this. I'm going to change the mode a little bit to make this basic relationships. And then I'm going to go in and define everything. So another way to define is to click on the component of the model that's being impacted, and then go over here to this arrow tool, connection arrow tool. and you'll get a list of all the things that are connected in, and you can highlight them one at a time, and what will be displayed over here will change a little bit. So an increase in births causes deer population to increase. An increase in deaths causes deer population to decrease. Increase in wolves would cause deer population to decrease. And I'm just going to point it, whoops, sorry about that. Point this out here. There is an option, and this is very confusing for kids, I have to admit, and the terms that we're using, I think, are pretty poor. But it essentially is telling the software what to do with the input variables to this particular variable here. Do we want to combine them using an average, which is an additive function? So to do that, it would just take the values for all three and then divide by, add them together and then divide by 3. There's also a multiplicative function, which we're calling limiting factor, that will take the 3 and multiply them. And that becomes much more important when you're doing the dynamic models. So for now, I'm just going to do average. And I now have a model where the students have defined what they believe the causal links to be, what's their location. So we're defining the structure of the model. They've defined a little bit about what they think the weighting of those would be and their influence upon the variable that they are pointing to. And so they can now simulate that. So we can go up here and simulate to see what their thinking might be. Does the model actually match their thinking? So if I increase births, you'll see this is a bar graph. The deer population will go up, assuming that deaths and wolves remain the same. If I increase the wolves, the deer population goes down. If I increase deaths, the deer population goes down. And I can create incredibly complex models. I could show you some that kids have put together that have 15, 20, 30 variables in them all connected up. And you can get these instantaneous responses throughout the system using this type of modeling. But this is about dynamic modeling mostly. So let's focus on that. So I'm going to go over to creating a dynamic time-based simulation. Now, by doing that, the icons that appear up here look different. Another thing that looks different is that the bar graphs in there are now lines. And those lines are representing behavior over time. So this is change over time. So right now, everything's in equilibrium. Right, if I increase the deaths, the deer population goes down, but we're assuming that everything remains in equilibrium at this point. That's because we don't have any stocks, we don't have any flows in here. So I'm going to change some of these variables now. I'm going to take the deer population and change it over to become a stock, which we call a collector here, a collection of things. And you might see as I did that, what was a single deer has now changed to a group of deer, to indicate that it's a population or an accumulation of that. The births would still connect to that, right? They would still add to that. Deaths would still connect to that. And if I go in here and go to define those things now, because it's now in dynamic mode, what you'll see is that the births, the dialogue is a little different. It says that the births is now added to, subtracted from, or sets the initial value of that stock. So I'm going to say they're added to the stock each time step. And for deaths are subtracted from the deer population. And you see that connecting arrow that was pointing into the deer population has now turned into this gray pipe showing a flow. So we've essentially created now a very simple stock and flow diagram, right? It's kind of like a bathtub model. I can simulate that. And right now it looks like the deaths are a little higher than the births, right? But I can fiddle with this. If the deaths go below the births, you get increase. If the deaths go above the births, you get decrease. So that's pretty simple, right? But to go a little further with this, let's take it to where Don took his model and where John took his. We know we have say a birth fraction for the births, so I can connect that in. We know we're going to have an average lifespan for the deer, so I can connect that in. We also know that we have some feedback, right? So I can connect that in, and then I can go to define all of these. So I'm going to click on births, click over on the connection arrow, and I'll get the dialog box. It says an increase in birth fraction causes births to, and we'll say increase. And if I click on deer population, more deer population means more is added to the deer population each step, right? So that would be a reinforcing feedback loop. And you'll notice that this is now designated as combining by average, which is additive. I don't want that. I want it to be a multiplicative function. So I'll switch to that. Do the same thing over here. An increase in average lifespan causes deaths to decrease. And more deer population means that we're going to get more subtracted from the deer population each time step. And I want to change this to limiting factor. So here's your basic population model, the same one that Don created, the same one that John created in his. If I simulate it, starts out in equilibrium, we have equal birth fraction and death fraction. But if I increase the lifespan and whoops, sorry about this. This is my mouse. I can start to see that I'm getting exponential growth here, right? And I can change the time steps up here to see that, in fact, it's going to be exponential. And you can also start, the students can start connecting things. Well, I think the wolves are going to influence the births, so I can stick that in and click on wolves, and increase in wolves causes deaths to increase. And again, I can play with the wolves a little bit. If the wolves go up, deaths go up, population goes down. And you can start to see, I mean, there are no numbers here, right? There is no real possibility of trying to be overly computational about all of this. But it offers the opportunity for kids to, first of all, start integrating the paradigm of stocks and flows, right? That's number one. And then starting to look at how structure in the model can actually impact the behavior over time. And as we were putting all this together, we really were thinking about this as being a stepping stone into more complicated programs like stage modeling. So I'm going to leave it there, come back to this last slide here. And just, this is the contact information. If you want more information about the software itself, you can go to this website and it'll give you some background information. You can contact me. I'm still working at Concord Consortium, so this is my current email. And if you want to know about other materials that Concord has developed, you can go to concord.org and get that information. So that was
Thank
pretty
you very
quick.
much.
Pretty darn
Thank
quick.
you. Yes. And this was a problem. We had 3 presenters because there were 3 softwares that we wanted to show you. And it started out 5-minute presentations, which was, each of them said was just impossible to say enough to give you an idea. So we made it 10 minutes, and even 10 minutes is insufficient. But I'd like to open it up to any questions. We will continue after the hour for anyone who can stay, so we can answer all your questions. But please, any questions you have, feel free to raise your hand electronically if possible. Anyone have any questions for any of our speakers? Oh, I was not looking at the chat, so.
Oh, chat, let's look at the chat.
Yes, I will look at the chat. Martha, why don't you go ahead with your question?
Okay, thank you. I just can't get over how impressive all these advancements are over such a short period of time. A question for everyone, and this is just so basic, is to what emphasis do teachers to what importance do teachers pay to the very basic, well, it's a systems thinking skill, I guess it's critical thinking, is to prompt the students to try to anticipate the answer to the question before something passively comes up on a screen and tells them the answer to their question. It's so basic, but it's also kind of, it gets the students off the model and sort of into their own questioning mind. Do you see what I'm trying to get at here? I don't know if I'm making
Yeah,
myself
I
clear.
think so. Let me just start with that. With Sage Modeler, I mean, that software has been used in research, right? Where we would have students building models, and before they could simulate the model, we would often ask them to sketch out what they think the model is going to do, what's going to be the behavior of this model that you built. Trying to get them to focus a little bit on their thinking about the structure of that model. And I know that Stella, I mean, they have a way you can sketch out what you believe the model is going to do. You can have a blank graph axis where you can sketch out what you believe the behavior is going to be, and then you can run the model to compare. And in the classroom, we have used those situations to prompt pretty in-depth discussions about student thinking. You know, why did you think it was going to do this when in fact it did something different? And start those conversations that actually have them thinking about their own thinking. So, you know, teachers do it, but my experience is that you have to kind of train the teachers about this, because many of them don't know much about modeling when they start, or how to use it in a classroom, how best to use it.
Martha,
Okay.
I think that's really one of the primary lesson objectives for modeling, is to have students anticipate the
Yeah.
behavior of a model and then
Yeah.
explain discrepancies between what the model actually produces and what they anticipated, because that's where a lot of the learning happens.
Yeah, yeah. And also opportunities to start talking about the modeling that's going on. It's such an opportunity to get this other part of,
Right.
it's not just the model, it's the conversation around the model that really is the drive home here.
Right.
So I just was wondering how much of a priority it is in
Yeah.
the professional pedagogic community at large. It just seems so critical.
And I think for teachers, it's not just learning how to use the software itself, it's learning what to do as part of a learning environment with students with the software. And that's why I think it's really important when we're doing workshops for teachers that we bring those ideas in. Emre will tell you that they do workshops for teachers. Sorry, Emre, I'm speaking for you. They do workshops for teachers, and that is sort of an initial step, but teachers are not comfortable taking those ideas into their classroom. So they follow up their workshops with mentoring. How do you help the teacher actually implement what they've seen in a workshop?
That's a good idea.
To the classroom? And with Emre's group, they work with preschool students, primary school students, middle school students, and they're starting to work with high school students. And each of those mentoring ideas is slightly different, you know, because the environment is different, the kids are different, the teacher's comfort level is different.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be a huge piece of what we do as we try to bring the idea of using models in the classroom forward, that mentoring piece. And that's actually a webinar I would like to have this year. Is different levels of actual mentoring for primary, for middle, and for high school. And if we can find any of the teachers willing to talk, how that mentoring has affected them, what worked and what didn't work, that's something we have planned for this year as a webinar.
I think that's so high leverage. It just is so, you know, they even talk about it in what's Stacy over at En-ROADS, Andrew, and John Stern, they're all frustrated. In their workshops for the facilitators, they emphasize get the people to think and try to anticipate, because that's a conversation starter and it's also a critical thinking mode. And they're just as frustrated. And I in the Canadian Climate Ambassadors group, it just isn't high enough on the radar because it's hard to do.
It is.
But it just is so, you want to talk about a high leverage, long-term skill, systems thinking skill, it's the ability to sort of get off the software and that seems to be a big step towards that ultimate goal of modeling, is to get off the software.
Emre,
Anyway,
would you?
thank you.
Sorry, Martha. Emre, would you like to say something?
I would like to add something. Before the modeling, actually, we need to have a problem to model. When working in a unit, as far as I can see, the hardest part for a teacher or for me is to find what is changing. What if I were to do it, what kind of a behavior of a behavior over time graph should be drawn? If you spot it, if you find it successfully, then this might become your stock. So then after that, you can just start doing a stock flow diagram. So I think this is a prerequisite for a good model, because there are many things in a unit or a lesson that you can just start doing the graphs, but which one is the one that makes the learning objective?
Right.
Jorge?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Diana. Good to see you again. Happy New Year for everyone.
Happy New Year.
Hello, Martha. Hello, everyone. I think it's really interesting, the discussion, because I think there is a kind of, let me say, framework here. The paradigm you use to design the software, the educational objectives, the age of the children. Let me say that. But I think it's really, really awesome. We can have some kind of availability of tools and free tools for teachers, because I think that's a bottleneck here, because we need a lot of tools and also a lot of training about the paradigm and about how to use in the right way the software to develop the system thinking and system dynamics abilities. And congratulations, I think it's really great discussion. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Martha, would you like to say something?
Sorry. Yeah, just really, really briefly. Emre, I have found incredibly helpful Alan. I see Alan's here. Alan Tukotsky's book, Now What?
Yes.
A Call to Action.
Yeah.
To me, he has the biggest advancement in Barry Richmond's basic thinking skills. He has taken it and has created sort of a loose framework of, well, how do we discuss cities? What are the advantages? What are the limitations? He sets up a pros and cons things right away, gets the students to think in trends. That book is I think our best work at structuring the students' thinking in, well, how do I even choose what problem? Is it going to be simulated? Can I look at a static system? Get that book, please. Get that book and use it. It is a godsend. It really, really is.
Actually, so I'm going to add something to that. Alan's first book, The Shape of Change, is also a wonderful book. And the thing I like about Alan's first book is he actually lists questions for the teacher to ask the students. So that is another step in how to get them to start, how to have the teachers start getting the students to bring out their thinking about the dynamics. And it has suggested answers for teachers who are just beginners and don't know how to do this. It's just wonderful. And the other thing about that book, oh, there are so many things about his books that are wonderful. The other thing is he usually starts, he and Rob Quaden, they both wrote that book with Deb Linus. It's just one of my absolute favorite books. They start with a physical activity. So for younger students to actually understand the dynamics, they do either data collection or some kind of physical activity for the students to get a conceptual understanding of the dynamics of the system before they go into the systems thinking tools. And it's just exactly a way to think about how to get started. So if you have any money at all, you should get those books. They are absolutely wonderful and they're not very expensive. So I think they're terrific. Oh, Alan. Yay,
There's Alan.
Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Thank you for your work.
Well, thank you very much. I also want to say that the CLE has a lot of the lessons and things for free as well. So try them out first. I mean, it's always nice to support the CLE, Creative Learning Exchange, but also, just if you see that they're reasonable for you to use, you can try them out first. But thank you. I really appreciate all the praise. It's really difficult. I'm now retired, but the step from simulation, the physical games and things, to the actual modeling is it's a big step. And I like hearing what folks have been saying today, Martha and Stephen and others about getting to the modeling and the stock flows. I like how Emre always talks about the importance of stock flows. So that seems to be a big step. And I was really impressed today with folks' use of the software as well. So I thought that was a good thing. But it's good to remember for me that starting with the behavior over time graphs and then trying to look at what the stocks are and the flow connections and build it from there is really good. And Diane, I just want to throw back a compliment to you. We've always found your step-by-step instructions for teachers very helpful in getting kids to start modeling at the middle school and early high school years.
Thank you very much. So I see we're over time, but I would like to say we're looking for ideas for webinars. We definitely want to do one on mentoring. We are definitely going to do one on the work that they're doing in Turkey with trying to infuse systems thinking into teacher training classes at the university. Pre-service teachers, because that's a place we need to infect. And some of the work has been done in Turkey. And we're going to have a webinar on how they have included systems thinking in pre-service training for teachers. Probably at the end of the year, we'll talk about our systems thinking assessment questions, because we have over 200 questions and they have been reviewed now 4 times. And we are in the process this year of testing some of these questions in the classroom. But we're not quite ready to move forward with making those available until we feel like we have gone through them more carefully. And so we would like ideas from you. Sorry, Emre, I always ask you to do this. Would you put our email in the chat? This is our SIG, this is our System Dynamics Society pre-college SIG email. if you have ideas for webinars, in the email that Emre sent out advertising this SIG meeting, he listed some of the topics we have already talked about in webinars, but if you have things you would like to know, or that we would try to find presenters for on topics that you think that would be relevant for K-12, people interested in K-12, not just educators, but people interested in K-12, we would like to know that, so we could maybe either make a webinar or a SIG meeting focused on that, so we can have conversation around that. We're looking for your ideas on how best to serve you. Is there anything else? Thank you. Oh, another thing we'll probably do is we are putting together a package for countries that want to start systems thinking in K-12. And what it has are some papers, a model about spreading K-12, spreading system dynamics in K-12, getting started with behavior over time graphs, getting started with some of the other tools, and some beginning models for different disciplines in Stella Online. And so we will make a webinar later this year to present that to people. So you have at least one place. There are other places, but this will be one place to go for source information that you can use if you're trying to influence someone or some people to start systems thinking, system dynamics in their country, or even in a state. It's like the United States is like 50 countries. You know, if you're trying to start something in a location that could be helpful to you. I know we're over time by 8 minutes. Is there anyone else who has questions? Martha?
More suggestion, and it's early stages here. Thanks for suggesting the Shape of Change book. I've actually bought 3 copies, but what I'm doing a little differently is I'm sending these copies to people, to parents who are very, very thinking parents. They want to raise their kids, and I'm wondering if if that might not be another reach out variable in this model between students and teachers, but to include the parents in the model, because it's so longitudinal. And I would love to see, or for you in the SIG to consider, could there be a family oriented, let's be a family and learn systems thinking, let's be a family and learn stock and flow, because the parents are, I recognize the kids watch the parents, and if the parents can role model that they're being lifelong learners here, the kids are more likely to do it with their own children, so you get the longitudinal benefit. But also, I sometimes wonder, at least here in Canada, if the teachers are not confident enough to see how powerful position they are in, and that they may be looking for some outside their professional organization support, and say, well, you know, parents of these kids, they've learned this through blah, blah, whatever their professional exposure is to systems thinking. And gosh, you know what? They want their kids, they want to learn about it, and they want their kids to learn about it, because I'm going to be getting these parents to look at the Shape of Change. They've also got the habits cards from Water System. I've given both to them, and I want them to feel so strongly and passionate about the importance of this, that they can put pressure as well. So the students have it, and you say pressure, but you also say support as well. So could there be a family-oriented SIG, session that recognizes the importance of the parents in the learning, this long-term, lifelong, talk of it as literacy. That's how I'm going to frame this with my friends. They're lifelong learners, really.
Thanks, Martha. Emre, I think that's something we maybe need to add to the model of the spreading that we have not in the model right now. We don't have anything about parents. And I know that every time I was able to talk to parents, like at back to school night, at parent teacher conferences, I always talked about system dynamics, especially with the parents of students I thought would be really open to these ideas. I think that
Yes.
we have not looked at parents as a resource enough, and I think that that's true. We need to do that. Henny, would you like to say something?
It's actually a couple of things. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want just to mention that the EU has thought about what green competencies are, and then I have a directive which includes system thinking, and that should be adapted at schools, but that will take a long time before that to happen. But just to mention that. The other thing I was wondering about is whether that's more like a question, whether there's also agent-based modeling in college situations, because in economics, that's my subject, there's a lot of agent-based thinking. So I thought, could that be, well, a path to follow? And the other thing I was thinking that might be of some help is that I have these Sistem books. I don't know if you know those. They include all kinds of fancy models that I already adapted. For some of them, I already adapted to Insight Maker. And which for different kinds of subjects, and I'm mostly interested in economics, but they also have ecologics. I build some ecological resource models to use in a course that I've developed. I thought that might actually be interesting to add to some kind of exchange, so people could use that, because I noticed that when I was actually building these models, they really gave me some interesting insights. And well, that might be interesting, something to share with others. Well, and that's my 2 cents or 3.
Well, that's what George said. Copying models can be a very good way to gain insights. So especially from one modeling or one methodology to another methodology can be quite useful for learning. Thank you very much, Henny. I have my own sort of reservations about agent-based. Of course, I know how to model with agent-based software, but at this point, I don't. When I did it, we had to essentially learn a computer language. So it was C. You had to know C. Well, luckily I taught programming, and that was not a problem for me, but it's not as easy. There's an extra barrier, and I think that would make teachers somewhat more hesitant to use it. Whereas system dynamics, there's not that barrier. It's the visual representation right away. You can step into it, especially when we're trying to make it as simple as possible. No hidden fancy mathematics underneath the surface. It's supposed to be as simple as possible. And we're having trouble even with that. So that's why I'm a little hesitant with the agent-based, although there are some wonderful things that agent-based can do. It's not as approachable, I think, as the system dynamics.
Yes, I agree.
Emre, did you want to say something?
I was muted. I want to say 2 things. One is about this agent modeling thing. I'm not an expert in any of these, but as far as I can see, the problem in a system is you can see the parts, but you cannot see the relations. And in a stock flow diagram or causal loop diagram, you just see the relations. And in agents, you see the agents, the parts, but you do not see the relations. You have to know the code to feel, not to see, but to kind of feel the in the it is in the code. So it might be very good to see what do they do much more realistic. But I think there's that part is lacking. And the other one about reaching the parents, I think the teacher, I'm thinking about the model. I think that we can reach the parents through teachers because teachers have a very strong weapon called homework. And if they give that homework to watch this video or attend this seminar or any kind of event that we might later organize, they will come. The problem in Turkey, most of them do not speak English, so it is not practical in Turkey, but we can do anywhere that can speak English.
Good point. Steve, did you want to? Thank you, Emre.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just to follow up on this conversation, I agree with Diane and Emre about the learning curve for agent-based modeling. I mean, it's a very difficult thing. But I will say this, that during my last year of teaching, I was involved in a research grant where they actually came into my classroom and we looked at epidemics, and half the students learned how to do agent-based modeling with NetLogo. And they also learned how to do agent-based modeling with Sage Modeler, or to do modeling with Sage Modeler. And then they would build models and switch. And then they had to choose the way that they liked it best. And it was really interesting. The split down the two classes that I had was almost 50-50. There were those kids who really like latched onto the coding piece of the agent-based modeling. And there were those kids who said, I hate that, give me these icons. They make a lot more sense to me. So I think there is a real place for agent-based modeling, but it is difficult. And talk about support for system dynamics by stock and flow modeling. I mean, you really need support, I think, for the agent-based modeling for the teachers as well as the students. And the last thing I'll say is that NetLogo, which is also a free program, I don't know if you know of NetLogo, but there's one mode, that you can do stock and flow diagramming and modeling in NetLogo. So you can actually do both. So there's, with a little bit.
It's really hard because
but with a little bit of imagination, you can think about ways perhaps to get kids to see both sides of it. Yeah. So,
but you have to write your equations and code in a separate window in the code view, and it's rather a bit clumsy. So.
Well, nobody said modeling was going to be easy. We're trying to make it easy.
There are kids that just love the coding.
They do.
Definitely,
I know. That's my point.
Something that could be done, say, even in a programming class. It would be nice to incorporate some of these techniques in a modeling class where it's a great extension of what they might be learning in class or application.
And I don't think it's just that you can do the coding, but it's also about the fact that you have to think about how the agents will behave. So it's about building rules, and it's completely different from a stock dynamics model. So I myself would like that.
Yeah.
That part.
Yeah. Well, I think we're already 20 after. Would anyone like to say anything else? We have a few very staunch people still here. So I want to give you an opportunity to say something if you want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Martha for bringing up the pedagogy and the family connections, because it's really important for students to carry what they're learning into their daily lives, right, and outside of the classroom. And I think they tend to think of everything as being, what happens in the classroom stays in the classroom, and doesn't have a lot of relevance to their lives.
Jorge, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Diana. Yes, I think we had a seminar last week, I guess. We talk about system thinking for sustainability, and I guess here with children, with teachers, with communities, we have a lot to do to promote a skill, system thinking skill for sustainability. And I agree with Mark. Nice, the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I guess that's it.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
This will
everyone.
be
See
record-
you.
This
Thanks,
is
everybody.
recorded.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Few days. So if you want to look over the presentations again, and thank you to our presenters for the
Thank you.
time and effort that you went into to give us really good presentations. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry about the 10-minute limit.
Yeah,
You
it's okay.
know, really
okay.
sorry about that. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Ayana.
All right.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay.
See you
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye-bye.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.